I'm talking to Bill West, the Mayor of Cowra. Now, Bill West, there was a meeting last night, a public meeting last night, in relation to the renovations and the refurbishment of the main street. What was the general feeling of that meeting?
I think that a number of councillors, and me included, were a little bit disappointed. I think the facilitator, without being too critical, might have allowed for some discussion, which really wasn't the purpose of the meeting. The purpose of the meeting was to clearly give the community an opportunity to raise issues around about the alternate routes to bypass, or the detours that were going to be in place when the CBD work or the Kendall Street work was being done, and also the staging and how that might impact on businesses. Unfortunately, we got back on doing sometimes some of the proposals themselves, and it needs to be remembered that Council resolved quite some time ago to go down this path of the refurbishment of Kendall Street, and that's been done with a lot of public consultation, a lot of community consultation, a lot of decision, and looking at really the best options to get the balance right between Kendall Street being a highway, heavy vehicles, trucks, through traffic, local through traffic, but also then the balance with our pedestrians and our pedestrian safety, as well as the very important aspect that I think is a bit overlooked sometimes is and unfortunately overlooked, is the importance of Kendall Street as our CBD, our central retail sector, our central business sector. And part of the balance that the Council has been striving for and is continuing to strive for is to get that safety issue, the pedestrians protected, and also trying to create an environment where business will bloom and will flourish and create economic development and growth. And I think that even last night the balance was still, in some areas, was being talked about of just in the balance of vehicles and heavy vehicles, and not the other very important aspects.
Well, the majority of vehicles that go down are not heavy vehicles.
The majority of vehicles aren't heavy vehicles, and it would appear from the studies that we had done, and I think you were part of that working party initially, which was a community working party, that became quite apparent that a lot of the vehicles that go down Kendall Street on a daily basis are actually local traffic, because one of the issues that I think everybody would understand is that the Kendall Street is a funnel. And it runs down over the river, and we've got one crossing of the river that's the bridge, and that tends to gravitate and create a lot of restrictions that other towns don't have in terms of resolving some of these issues of conflict with their CBDs and their main streets.
My understanding is too there was a bit of a discussion about temporary detours and the pluses and the minus for a couple of ideas.
And that's not a new discussion. I think we had a discussion with the business owners, some of the CBD business owners, 2 or 3 weeks ago about this, and that was raised again, and looked at Liverpool Street and Bow Street, and one of the favourite options out of last night was Braham Street, which I think is going to have some restrictions on. The restrictions weren't raised last night, but I know, looking at it today, that there's some real issues down around the swimming pool and that narrow, where the old rail viaduct was, that western end of Braham Street, how narrow it is, turning circles for B-doubles and semi-trailers from Braham Street past the pool onto Tarragala Street. So there's some real restrictions in that area as well. So I think that Liverpool Street and that area was ruled out, and I think Bow Street is something that will continue to be looked at very closely, but being very mindful of the fact that there is an issue with the school, safety of kids, bus pickups, noise around school zones, all those sorts of issues, the amenity and the noise issues and the safety issues that were raised in regard to Bow Street, which are probably the exact issues we're dealing with in Kendall Street to an extent.
So even if you use Braham Street, you're still going to have the issue with River Park, aren't you? And the climb back up onto the bridge.
The climb back onto the bridge, and as you go onto the bridge travelling in the westerly direction, will still be there, and RMS have indicated they will work to resolve that and facilitate that turn. But yes, Braham Street will necessitate going down past the sporting fields, and will necessitate going down past the pool in what will be peak summer period.
And with the proposed date to start, I believe, is the 27th?
End of January is a proposed date, and I think the 27th is the date that's been banned year round, but that could be a few days either way, but that's when it's proposed to start work, yes. And I think some of the issues that were raised last night also clearly highlighted some of the difficulties in moving traffic around Cowra, and some of the restrictions that we have with that we've had to deal with and had to look at very carefully have been not just the restriction of the river and the bridge, but also the hospital and the hill and the school, St Raphael School, as well as the public school on the Cal Public School on the southern side, a swimming pool, Bellevue Hill, the railway line, all those issues which really do create something quite special about Cowra's environment, but one which makes it very difficult to resolve some of these issues. And of course the other one that came last night was the bypass, and I think I made it very clear, and I'd make it very clear that the council is doing a brief to go out and seek consultants to do the review of environmental factors, which is the next important step in regards to that bypass, the bypass around the southern side of Cowra. Once that review of environmental factors is completed, then we can look at some of the issues that have to be addressed. We will then have a detailed plan, and that will then enable us to seek funding, but it's not something that we can do today or tomorrow or next week, and it's not something there's money out there for bypasses. So it could well be a long-term program, but we've got to get the planning right before we can actually start going to Canberra or Sydney and saying, look, we've got a real issue here, we need a bypass.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
My pleasure, Gary. Thank you for your interest.